How is a movie about some very kind of mundane but also important problems so good? I don't know, but let's talk about You Hurt My Feelings. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Past. I'm here to talk to you about You Hurt My Feelings, which is coming to theaters on May 26, 2023. It is a new film by acclaimed writer-director Nicole Holofcener. She did Enough Said, which I absolutely love, and You Hurt My Feelings is no different. I loved Enough Said because it felt so kind of like, I don't know, real, authentic. It depicted a kind of natural, beautiful, older relationship. You Hurt My Feelings is also just a wonderful, heartfelt film, but this is a little bit more of a comedy. My hot take is, look, I think you should watch it. It is interesting because it deals with these people that have some very kind of real problems, but also not super important problems, but they are important to them. It is just a wonderful, heartfelt look at life and some of the aspects that we sugarcoat to get through it, with a great cast, some really sharp writing, and a dry humor that is both funny and biting. I didn't really know what to expect, and I love this movie. So I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, briefly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in this movie, I would turn off at the ending section. But don't worry, before that, I will keep it vague and I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So in You Hurt My Feelings, you have four main characters. You have Beth, who is a writer slash writing instructor. You have her husband, Don, who is a psychiatrist. You have Beth's sister, Sarah, who is an interior designer. And you have Sarah's husband, Mark, who is an actor. They are kind of the nucleus of this film. Their interactions and their problems that arise during the film form like the main kind of thrust of this story, kind of seeing how they react to things, seeing how they help each other, and also kind of deal with these problems that come up, seeing the interactions between these various friends slash family. It is really fun to see, and it's just kind of really an enjoyable experience. So what makes this film so enjoyable? Here's things I liked about this movie. The first, it's the humor. It has this really kind of wonderful, dry sense of humor that I just loved. It's not like overtly like slapstick funny, but the writing is so good, it's so sharp, that there are just so many very funny moments, like either the interactions between the people, the things that they say, the kind of like reactions to events. There's some really funny scenes involving Don and his therapy sessions. There's some really kind of clever observations between all of them. Overall, like, this film just has these moments that something will happen, someone will say something, and you just kind of can't help but chuckle, you can't help but laugh. This movie has a lot of very kind of like fun moments that will just kind of make you smile and chuckle and really kind of keep this story flowing. The second thing I loved are the characters, and this is partly the cast, partly the characters. Just everyone is so different. You've got these four main individuals who all have very different careers and very different kind of like outlooks on life, and it really kind of makes a nice kind of menu for these situations to arise. You're kind of seeing these characters interact, seeing kind of how they approach different issues and support each other, and also kind of like cause problems, is a lot of fun. And that's kind of like the main thrust of this movie. The third thing I really loved is the storytelling. Look, this film doesn't really spoon feed you. It doesn't have to, because the situation is fairly easy to understand. But I did love that, like, everything comes out in the conversations. There's no kind of overarching narrative. There's no like narrator. Like, everything comes out in the characters' interactions, and that leads to like this really nice, interesting way to learn things. You don't get a full picture at the start. You kind of like get little bits of information here and there. And I love that kind of storytelling. I love when it kind of puts the onus on the viewer to pay attention and kind of really learn what's happening. And this film does that perfectly, and it makes it so it's really kind of engaging to follow. And the last thing I really loved is the overall story. Look, like I mentioned, this film deals with some problems that are not super important, I guess, but they are important to these people. And it's a very relatable type of situation. I really loved how this story kind of had all these interconnected parts, like all these characters interacted together and separately, and they really just kind of like went in and out. Everyone was kind of connected in this story. That made it really fun to kind of like see their interactions and kind of learn more about them and see how they approach the various problems that arose during this film. So that being said, a lot of things I loved, things I didn't love as much. The only really thing, and this is not actually really a problem with the film, it's something I just kind of like noticed partway through, and I think it's part of the charm of this movie. The problems that these people are dealing with, they seem fairly mundane overall. Like, there's no like big major problem, but I think that's part of the point. I think that's one of the things that this film is trying to like explore. It's like I keep saying, these problems aren't really that important, but they are very important to the people involved. I think this movie recognizes that that like the problems aren't that big because the title is "You Hurt My Feelings." It's not anything more than like hurting your feelings. So I think this movie kind of plays with that and just kind of like really embraces the insignificant things that are very, very important to the people involved. I don't know. This kind of, I guess I'm more neutral on this because on the one hand, the problems didn't seem like that big, but on the other hand, it's part of what makes this movie so kind of like fun and charming and enjoyable to watch because you never have like this major, major life and death type of situation. You have these little things that can eat at you and kind of force you to reevaluate your relationships and reevaluate things about your life. And this film really kind of focuses on those little things that can kind of add up over time. So that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ending. I'll tell you about some of those problems that arise during this film. So if you don't want to know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off now. Just know that You Hurt My Feelings comes to theaters on May 26, 2023, and you should definitely check it out. It's a really fun film. It's a very enjoyable experience. So Beth is a writer and she is working on her second book. It's a fiction book. She is really trying to get it sold, but she hasn't heard back from her publisher. And at some point during the film, she overhears her husband talking to, I guess, his brother-in-law, that he doesn't actually like her book. He thinks it's bad, but he can't like tell her because they've gone through so many iterations that, and he's always been very supportive of her, and he can't like tell her that he thinks it's bad. So it's just one of those things that he is just kind of like living with. This really shakes Beth because like, I don't know, I guess she trusted him, she like trusts his opinion, and now she thinks like he's lied to her for all this time. Again, you could look at it two ways. You could say like, oh, well, he's just being supportive, he's trying to like support her in her endeavor, or he is kind of sugarcoating things and like lying to her. And what else has he lied to? Again, like I said, this is not a huge problem, but it's something that really shakes Beth because it shakes her kind of like trust in him. Now, her husband Don is a therapist, and he starts to kind of like deal with, I don't know, like a lack of interest in his work. He is not as sharp as he used to be. He's not kind of as helpful as he used to be. And he just feels like he's getting old. He kind of worries about his looks. He worries about not being able to kind of do his job as well. He worries about just being tired overall. So that is kind of like his overall crisis. Now, Sarah is similar. She is an interior designer and she's just kind of like starting to lose a passion for her work. She is thinking that maybe she is not doing the best thing in their life, trying to like help very rich people find these weird, obscure things and like make the perfect piece for their expensive houses. It feels like maybe she is not like getting the kind of fulfillment that she used to. And her husband Mark is an actor who has had a few minor roles, things like that. Like he has had a career, but not the career that he wanted. And he just booked a theater show and he gets fired. He gets fired because I guess the role wasn't working, and so that was his like first big time being fired, and he just doesn't want to act anymore. He's like over it. So those are the big kind of crises that happen to these characters. Now the main one is between Beth and Dawn. Beth kind of like losing trust in Dawn, losing trust in like his opinion of her, and Dawn just trying to like, I don't know, explain that he doesn't see it as lying, like he's just trying to be supportive. So Beth is really kind of shaken by this. Her like trust in Dawn is shot. But I think she also like is shaken because she's worried that maybe he's right. Like his opinion maybe is right. Her first book, her memoir, did okay, but didn't do as well as I think she expected. And the second book hasn't really been picked up by a publisher. So she is both upset about him because maybe if he would have been more honest, she could have tweaked it and made it better. And she's also upset with him because he was lying to her. It's like a kind of a dual crisis for her. And Dawn is just trying to explain, like, look, I was just trying to be supportive. Like, who cares if I didn't like your book? Like, I love you and I'm trying to be supportive. And mine is just one opinion. Like, I don't know if I am like a good judge of a book or a bad judge of a book. I just wanted to help you out and be supportive. And so this kind of goes on for a little bit, but eventually they get over it for a few things. One, Beth goes to a different publisher, a different kind of like agent who has been trying to like court her, trying to like get her to work with him. And he is very supportive. Like he is kind of definitely overselling, but he, thinks the book is great. He has a few notes, but he loves it. He really wants to kind of like help her out. And I think this helps her confidence because she had one agent who got her first book published, but she wasn't helping her very much in this one. Now she has someone else who's maybe a little bit hungrier, maybe, you know, he sees it differently, and he's really trying to get her book published. So that helps a lot. And then also Dawn and Beth have a son, Eliot, and he comes over at one point, and like after a breakup with his girlfriend, he has like this upset conversation with his parents. And one of the things he accuses Beth of doing is like of lying to him when he was young. You know, there's these instances where like she would say he was better than he thought he was, like she would say that he was more skilled or better than he thought he was. And he's saying like, you lied to me, like you made me think I was better than I was. And she's like, no, I was just encouraging you. And this conversation sounds very similar to what Dawn and Beth had. And so this little crisis, this little like, you know, conflict between the son and his parents, I think helps her to kind of like realize that a lot of people do this. It's not like that as big of a deal. She's still upset, but you know, Dawn does a really good job of kind of explaining himself. He's a therapist, even though he's not a great therapist, he's still a therapist. He should be able to do this. And so overall, Beth kind of gets over it. So Dawn also starts to kind of like address his concerns. He becomes a little bit more active as a therapist. He was very passive in a lot of the stuff. And in a couple of his patients, he starts to become a little more active. And I think it helps. One, he, you know, tells them that there's nothing that he can do, that they are, you know, they should just get a divorce. Like they are not making any progress. He thinks they should get a divorce. They're upset about this, but I think it's probably the right answer. Another patient who just kind of like constantly complains about the same thing over and over, he gives him like a good suggestion on something he could do to help. And that seems to resonate with this person. I think his name was Jim. And so that kind of, I think, helps Dawn feel better about his job and feel better about it. And there's one other thing that Dawn talks to Beth about, and she encourages him to do it. You don't really find out what it is at that point. You find out a little bit later. I'll get to that in a second. Now, Sarah and Mark have a little bit less kind of big moments, but Sarah eventually finds something for one of her clients who she's shown over and over this like light fixture that this client wants, and she hasn't been able to find it until she finds this horrible light fixture that both her and Beth hated, but her client likes it. So I don't know. It doesn't really feel like it's a great situation, but at least she kind of does her job, finds this thing for her client, and maybe that will like help her. I think she's probably also going to quit. And Mark, he just gets fired and decides like he's going to quit acting. So after all of these situations, after Dawn and Beth kind of like work it out, and after there is I guess robbery at the pot store that Eliot works at, Beth happens to be there, and I think it helps to kind of like reevaluate some of the things that are important to her. We get a transition to a year later, and we get to see how these different people evolve from their problems that they had a year ago. So you're at an anniversary dinner with Beth, Dawn, and Eliot. The film started with an anniversary dinner for Beth and Dawn. They gave themselves like presents that you could tell that neither of them really liked, but they were just being nice to each other. And they didn't invite their son. I mean, it's their anniversary dinner. Their son shouldn't be there, but they like were wondering if they should. Now, a year later, after they've kind of like worked out some of these issues in their life, one of the things that they had talked about was that the gifts that they gave each other at their anniversary, neither of them liked them. Like they liked maybe the first gift years and years ago that they got, but the couples kind of like got into a rut and kept giving each other the same things over and over. And so none of them like that. So now at this anniversary dinner, a year later, they're at the restaurant, Eliot's there, they're having fun, and they give each other gifts, and they re-gift each other the same horrible presents that they didn't like at the start, but they love it. They like think it's a fun inside joke. You can see that they are maybe a little bit more happy, they're a little bit more expressive. They clearly love each other, but now they're having a little more fun with it. You also find out that Beth's book was published, and it's doing well. Like she has a nice like snippet from like Goodreads. She seems pretty happy with it. It seems to be doing decently well. So she is in a pretty good place. You then go to a play that Mark is at. So Mark didn't give up acting, even though he said he would. He is now in a play and does a really good job, and is starting to get like some of the admiration. It's small admiration, but he's getting some of the admiration that he was hoping for. He gets some selfies with some people that went to the play. He seems to be doing well. Sarah, you know, really, I mean, she seems happy. I don't remember if she is like still working, but she seems happy as well. She's happy for her husband. And for some reason, Dawn is in there. And you don't know why at the start. They just say that he's not feeling well. So Beth and Eliot walk back. Eliot finally gives Beth a copy of a play that he'd been working on for years and years and years. So he also is kind of like overcoming some of these ruts that he was in. He finally has a first draft of this play. He gives it to Beth. He gives it to his mom and a copy for his dad and wants them to read it. So Beth goes back home with the copy of these books, and you see that Don has like redness under his eyes. It looks like he got some surgery to remove the bags under his eyes, maybe like make himself feel younger. One of the things he was dealing with is he kind of always looked tired, and he felt like he was tired. So maybe this will make him feel better about himself. Maybe he'll be more energetic. Who knows? But Don is also kind of addressing the things that that were bothering him. So the couple gets this manuscript from Eliot. They sit down to read it. They like sit down next to each other in bed. They start reading it. It is a very kind of like boring end, but it's also a perfect end because Beth and Dawn just kind of like love spending time with each other and are interested in helping their son. So the movie ends with them reading the manuscript and just kind of like digesting it. And that's the movie. That is You Hurt My Feelings. It deals with these problems that maybe don't seem that important, but are very important to the people involved. And I don't know, I really just liked it. It is just such a fun movie. The humor is really, really good. The writing is really good. The characters are interesting. And overall, it's just a really good time. So definitely check it out. That's You Hurt My Feelings. It comes to theaters on May 26, 2023. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.